Have you ever heard of a game where you've crash-landed on a large planet completely covered in water? The only thing you have is yourself to survive. You have to use the resources around you and the biomes around you to try and escape the planet. Welcome to Subnautica.
Suffered orbital hull failure. Cause unknown. 0 human life signs detected.
In the game of Subnautica, you play on a planet seemingly completely covered in water. The game looks beautiful at first glance. It's covered to the brim with living things everywhere. You can build your own bases and explore anywhere. You find all sorts of diverse creatures, and you can scan things as well to learn more information about them. But there's definitely much more to this planet than meets the eye.
Local scans show a nearby cave entrance, depth 90 meters, leading to an unknown environmental biome.
Now, of course, this video will have spoilers of the final game. In this video, I'm going to be doing something, once again, a little different from my other videos. I'm going to be doing a theory on the game of Subnautica.
Passing 200 meters, oxygen efficiency greatly decreased. Welcome aboard, Captain.
As I said before, the game of Subnautica has many different places to explore. But Subnautica is unfortunately a game. So there are going to be some spots where it doesn't want you to go, or an edge to the map. In this game, the edge to the map is a little scary and definitely tries to keep you from being there with really big things you don't want to mess with. But there is some information given to us about where we are when you get to the edge, which is very interesting. When you get to the edge of the map and continue, if you're really that dumb, you will get this PDA message.
Warning, entering ecological dead zone. Adding report to databank.
The report reads: geological scans of this area show a steep incline in all directions. This data is consistent with the theory that the Aurora crashed on the edge of a 2 km by 2 km volcanic crater. It has likely been millennia since the eruption reached the surface, encouraging the ecosystem within the crater to flourish. The ecology, the trench surrounding the crater, supports only 2 kinds of life: microscopic and Leviathan class. Exploration is ill-advised. Now, of course, this is just the game's way of trying to scare you out of this place. But that does leave a question that I myself wondered, and you might be wondering as well, which is, what about the rest of the planet? There's no way that this entire planet has nothing but this 2 km by 2 km volcano crater. Is there? Well, that's exactly what we intend to discuss in this video. Now, there has been the release of a new game called Subnautica Below Zero. This game takes place on the ice section of the Subnautica planet, which you can see when leaving the planet. Now, this shows that there is something else on this planet, but it doesn't necessarily tell us that these are the only 2 things. So now we have 2 things that could be the only things. And for all we know, the other thing could have been caused by something done by the precursors. Maybe something that affected the climate. Anything could have caused this. So for this video, we're just going to assume that this was caused completely naturally, that this icy section was always there. Now, of course, it is hard to get many details because this game is still in very early beta, as you can tell, most likely, by the slight transparency of the mountains, the bad textures, and the lack of things on these icy parts. But that brings us to another point, which is mountains. Now, in this game, when you look around, you do see these large mountains, which means that our volcano was not the only volcano, or at least not the only point at which there's some active lava. We can safely assume there is active lava in other places on the planet, or else these mountains we see wouldn't even be possible. Now, what you're going to see ahead will almost certainly contain spoilers to the final game, because, well, it is the final game. So, if you were able to look past the first spoiler warning, I would definitely recommend you look past this next part. It's simply to prove one of the things that I'm going to say. Anyways, as I was saying, we can't just expect to see the craters, as the only thing you see when you leave the planet is the two islands near our volcanic crater, as you'll see in a moment.
Auxiliary power unit online. Communications systems array active. Pressurizing hydraulics. Life support systems online. Primary computer systems active. All systems are ready to launch on your command, Captain. Launch in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time capsule jettisoned. Caution, approaching orbital debris field. Orbital debris field clear. Performing gravity turn maneuver. Confirm destination coordinates. Nearest interstellar phase gate. Engaging ion boosters in 3, 2, 1.
What is a wave without the ocean? A beginning without an end. They are different, but they go together. Now you go among the stars, and I fall among the sand. We are different, but we go together.
Now, I have to admit, that ending was amazing. Anyways, in more important matters, you can only see a couple islands, and you can slightly see some geology, but we can safely assume that that's just the crater that we're on, still just expanded. 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer could be that much in comparison to the size of the planet. Keep in mind what we see and the size of the Neptune rocket in comparison to us and what we see while we're on there. So we can't necessarily assume that we'd again be able to see any of the other things. Also, we're only seeing a very small portion of the planet, which means that the rest is going to be completely debated. And that is where we're going to go to next. First of all, we can establish that the planet has a minimum depth of 8,000 meters, as 8,000 meters is the depth at the bottom of the void, where the volcano seems to just go into nothingness. Well, because it does. Obviously, because it's a game development, there are going to be some limitations that'll cause this, and the thing turning into nothingness most likely just is because they can't make a bottom at that point. But that doesn't still leave the question, which is, what else is down there? So, we can assume that there's a bottom right there, but we can also assume that it's much farther down, and that's just, again, the limitations of the game development. So, what does this mean for us right now? Well, if we know that there's a bottom to the planet, then we know the planet has a core. Now, this might sound a bit obvious, and of course it is, but it's always good just to make sure of things like this. Also, if there's a bottom to the planet, then that means there is a point at which life had to have started at some point, or at maybe volcanoes. We're going to assume that the planet of Subnautica follows the same basic rules as Earth, and has the same basic things at the bottom of the planet as Earth, including mid-ocean ridges and underwater volcanoes and vents and all the normal things that Earth has. So, if we assume this, then there's going to be some mid-ocean ridges at the bottom. We know this because mid-ocean ridges will form anytime there's lava underneath the water. This will mean also that there is C4 spreading down here. In other words, we can safely assume that Subnautica has evolved as a planet the same way as Earth has, which brings up some more questions and gives us some more answers. So, we can safely assume that life had to have started at some place on the planet. We know a volcano had to have been there before life because basic life cannot grow without heat. And life on Earth also didn't start until at least one volcanic eruption. So, if we assume this, then that means that there is a very high chance that life started at the bottom of this planet. Here's my proof. When a volcano starts, of course there will be a lot of vents near the top, but underground, or at the very bottom of the volcano, there's going to be a majority of tiny little vents and a lot of fissure eruptions. In case you don't know what a fissure eruption is, it's a tiny eruption most commonly at the bottom of the ocean. It's like a little crack in the bottom of the water. So, fissure eruptions would have probably happened on the Subnautica planet, and life would have most likely formed around those. We can safely assume that the earliest life would be all the bioluminescent life as well, as bioluminescence is something that would have only been needed when they were at the bottom of the ocean, which is, once again, where a majority of the planet would have been at that time. Now, there is a chance that there was life on other places of the planet and other heights at the planet, but most likely it was all at the bottom of the ocean or pretty close to it. And we know this because the planet could only have had a couple volcanoes by now, which would have meant only a couple places that these fish could live. So, if all the fish and plants started at the bottom of the planet, then where does that leave us, our creator, and where we are in the game? And more importantly, as the main question of this video is, where does that leave the rest of the planet? Of course, the rest of the planet must have life. Also, there is a very high likelihood the rest of the planet has other volcanic craters, just like ours. But there's also the high chance that the rest of the planet's craters have life drastically different than the life on ours, as you'll see in a moment. Now, according to the PDA, life has flourished only because the crater was inactive so long. So, other craters would have life developing on them as well, and it would happen because of the inactive crater, meaning the plants and animals would grow in whatever way they needed to survive. In other words, each crater would form differently and have a different ecosystem of plants and animals. Now, to back up the theory that there are other volcanic craters, you have to remember there is active lava in other places of the planet. There would be nothing stopping other craters from forming. Now that that's out of the way, we need to ask another question. What's at the bottom of the planet? Of course, as the PDA says, there's Leviathan-class life forms and microorganisms there. But that is just where you are when you get that PDA, as it also says. There would have to be a food chain in order for the ecosystem to live. So we have to develop one. Let's get to work. So as we know, the Leviathans must eat the microorganisms. This is also proved by their lack of teeth. Their jaws are made as a net, not a mouth. And when you are damaged, it is simply because of the way they hit you with their tusks or horns. But now we have yet another question. Man, there are so many of these. What do the microorganisms eat? Now, I hate to do this, but unfortunately, this video is getting a bit long, so I'm going to have to continue this in a part 2. Thanks for watching this part 1 theory, and the part 2 will be next week or the week after next week. Now, for the music I used in the video, I used the following tracks. These are in order that I used them, and the tracks were Lost River, Salutations, Crushed Depth, A Tendency to Float, Islands Beneath the Sea, Blueprint, and Tropical Eldin. These are all the Subnautica soundtrack. Thanks for watching. I'm Cooking My Daisy, and I'm out.